Have you ever wanted to travel through time? I know as a fan of Back to the Future and the original Time Machine and later Time Machine movies, having a time machine has always been a fun thing, a fun concept. So I decided to buy one. This is the Quasar Great Time Machine. As we mentioned earlier, it is the VR1000, and it is a VCR, a video recorder, a videotape recorder. Next to it, next to our optional timer here, is the video cassettes that this thing would use. These are rather large. I'll show you a comparison in size here shortly, and we'll even dig into how to repair one of these tapes in the forthcoming frames of this video. This is the cassette well that you would put it in to begin your time travel journey. Next to that is a tape counter to allow you to pick specific moments in time that you'd like to go back and visit. These are the piano keys that did all of the functions for the machine. Fast forward, rewind, play, monitor, which allowed you to watch the tuner or a camera input, a pause, stop control, and your power on and off. You had these amazingly fun and clicky mechanical tuner knobs that allow you to set the channel you wanted to watch, both in UHF and in VHF. And next to that is our AFT, our auto fine tuning button that allowed it to kind of, just kind of fine tune that signal, right? I guess that's not really a definition, but anyway, next to that is a VHF antenna switch that allowed you to connect between the TV or bypass for the TV antenna or switch to the VTR as the master of signals. There's a door right here that opens up, and inside are some cool controls. We have a very unusual button in here. It's the dehumidifier button. Listen to this. So inside this machine is essentially a little hairdryer that's pointed at a little light sensor, and apparently that light sensor could get humidity on it. So what the heck, we'll just install a hairdryer inside and we'll be able to keep that thing nice and clean and free of moisture. We have a tracking control and a skew control here, and we have a black and white and color switch, very much like the first Ataris. And believe it or not, there were people still in the 1970s that could not afford a color TV. So putting it in black and white would actually help the picture look better on those older black and white sets. This is another unusual thing about this VCR. This knob right here where it says slide slowly. So you'd slide it slowly from left to right, and on the inside of the cassette, it was moving this plastic piece right here. We'll cover it more later on as we dig into this cassette and what makes it tick. But it's actually taking this particular thing off and allowing a pre-looped amount of tape around the video head on the inside. Kind of cool. Didn't require any kind of mechanical loading, but it did require some cooperation on your part. On the back of the unit, just below this gorgeous simulated wood grain finish, is some inputs for our antennas. And we have a VHF input here, which used that flat wire type of wire, but you could use an adapter if you wanted to. So that would connect here for VHF, here for UHF, from antenna to the TV. Over to the right of there, we have a VHF out. We have an audio out and video out via RCA, a pause control jack, a mic input, a TV or camera mic switch, and a camera input right there. Down below that are some extra controls. You can't really see them too well here, but you can see here we have a color lock control that you could use a screwdriver, most likely a plastic screwdriver, to make that adjustment. And then to the right of that, we have a picture soft and sharp control. We have an extra outlet here for our mains. We could plug another item into this guy. And then we have a little compartment here for the RF converter. Apparently this was designed so that it could be used overseas on other standards of TV, maybe PAL, and you could use a foreign, to us, RF modulator. And that plugs back in right there and presses into place. Pull down the little lever, and then put your little cover back on, and that snaps back in. It operates at 122 volts, 60 hertz. Just to give you an idea of scale, I've set an 80s model VCR, VHS VCR, on the top of our VR1000, just to give you an idea of scale. Just how big are these VX cassettes? Well, pictured here is a VHS tape, also by Quasar, and you can see a VHS tape is pretty small in comparison to the size of that cassette there. Thickness-wise, you could probably put 2 VHS tapes inside of a VX cartridge. How do you operate your great time machine? Pretty simple operation. First, you're going to grab this lever, pull it to the left and then down. That will eject this tape loading mechanism here. Grab your Video 120 cassette, insert it in there, press firmly down on the lid, and then this is where the slide comes in. We're going to slowly slide this over to here. Once you've reached the other end here, you can then use your controls. You can use rewind, fast forward, etc. Now you've seen this lovely machine as it's working on the outside. Let's tear it apart and see what's going on the inside and how to repair it. Now let's take a look at what's going on inside the VR1000 when we play a tape. Some of the major components we see from this angle are a power transformer here, our little dehumidifying unit here, some kind of a RF modulator or video processing box right there. Next to that we have our motor, which is quite large, giant motor. I have seen motors like this inside of Sony VTRs, like reel-to-reel video recorders, EIAJ. Across from there we have our video head, which happens to be removable and is a one head unit. So there's only one video head that wraps around the tape and plays back the video signal. We have some guides there. We have our capstan and pinch roller. The pinch roller is hiding on the other side of that wall there. There he is down there. We have our erase head and audio head there, and if this system uses any kind of a sync track, then that would also be picked up by that head there on the left with the blue dot on the top. And then we're going to zoom back here and see those spindles. So these are quite the deal here. So we have a supply spindle on the bottom and we have a take-up spindle on the top. And both of those should move independently of one another. If they happen to both move together like this, then you can adjust this tap screw here, this nut, and it will allow you to change those settings. So over here we have our piano keys, our function keys, and then we have a large circuit board right there, and then some more circuit boards there and there, and then a tuner section, and we're talking analog tuning right here. This is the same kind of mechanical tuner that you would have on an old television set from the 60s and 70s and into the 80s most likely. If we were to somehow magically remove the cassette, we would see this happening on the inside. So the tape from the supply spindle on the bottom will come out here, go across the audio and erase heads here, go around the capstan and the pinch roller here, twist around the video head, come back out this side, go across a light detector right here, which I have bypassed with a piece of tape, and then the tape would go back to the take-up spindle here. And to see how that is working on the inside, let's take a look at fast forward first. Now let's take a look at rewind. And now let's take a look at playback.
Pontiac Firebird for 1981, a legend in its own time, turning heads with one of the sleekest profiles going. Taming the road with taut radial tune suspension. And now, Pontiac enhances this legend with a computer-assisted V6 engine. Firebird for 1981. With Pontiac know-how, the legend lives.
Well, Dad and George are out of the house, and I've made some General Foods International coffees.
Terrific. Now we can talk.
I feel like some smooth cafe francais.
Now let's move to the underside of the unit. I have taken the liberty of removing this circuit board. So there are two screws which hold this into place. There's one there, and then there's one down here. And then this entire circuit board has a hinge right there via that screw and one at the bottom. And that allows you to move this circuit board in and out for easy repair and troubleshooting. I'll give you a quick view of what's going on with this board right here. We'll just scan down it real quick. No capacitors were replaced in the making of this video. So what we have is that giant motor right there, and it has 3 belts rolling off of it. It has triple duty. So this is our capstan. This is actually the flywheel for the capstan. The second belt is the fast forward and rewind action, handled here. And then this third belt here, which has some little stripes on it, there they are, that handles the video head specifically. So the top of this right here is our video head. Okay, so crazy that they did it that way, since most modern VCRs have direct drive for each of those things. Yes, even the flywheel for the pinch roller and capstan. So we have some solenoids here. We have one here, and we have one there, and then we have 2 down here. All of those guys are responsible for the different functions. So if I was to hit rewind, you'll see a bunch of those pop into place. How about fast forward or vice versa? Again, all those wheels going crazy there. And then a little play action here. Okay, there's actually another solenoid on the top that pulls the pinch roller into place. So as far as the take-up spindle goes, it is driven by a motor specifically. Now, it's not a direct drive motor, but it is a motor. And that guy is right here. So this motor here, focusing in there, is attached to this wheel right here, and it is attached via a belt. So I had to take off this entire assembly that you see right here. All of that had to come off with the motor and everything to replace the belt underneath. Otherwise, it just eats tapes, because this particular wheel right in the middle of your screen is responsible for take-up on playback. And then you can see here, this is actually the wheel that it's attached to, which has those stripes on it, those silver stripes, which are read by a sensor, which I believe is right here, and that tells the machine that the tape spindle is moving. Okay, this belt here is for your tape counter, going down in there. There are some fuses down there. Looks like we've got at least 2, and we've got a relay right there. We've got a bunch of little dip switches inside here that actually tell it if you're hitting fast forward, play, rewind, etc. Got a circuit board up here. Take a look at the underside of it. And that is the underside of the time machine. So these are the circuits and flux capacitor that are required for us to travel back in time to the 1970s. Another thing to note about repairing this machine, and especially regarding getting the fast forward and rewind to work, is you're going to have to replace this tire. And let's see, let's get a nice focus there. There we go. So now you can see the cracks that are in this tire. Well, this tire lives right here on this particular roller or hub. And what I did is I replaced that tire with some O-rings from an O-ring kit. I covered this O-ring kit in my last video, and I'll put a link to that in this video as well. But that guy's gotta go, and that's all he handles is fast forward and rewind. And that C-clip you see on the top there allows you to take that off, and then that whole piece actually comes out of there. It moves up and down, and then there's a spring back behind it. You can see it there. It's not the one closest to you, it's the one in the background, and getting that back on was kind of a pain. But it's not too bad once you remove this particular board right here. In fact, let's take a look underneath that board just for fun. Some interesting stuff about this board right here is it has some controls on it that may be helpful in your repair. One is there's a speed setting right here, right in the center of your screen. Over here is a tracking control, an extra tracking control, and then there's a sub-tracking control right there. And I did mess with those a little bit, didn't do a whole lot of good, but this speed one was definitely helpful in dialing in the stability of the picture, we'll say. So this board, I've removed the two screws that you see right here, and this board lifts up like that. And then there's the bottom of that board. Boy, we have a lot of boards in this thing. There is the solenoid that handles the pinch roller right there. And that spring I was talking about that you might have a little trouble with is right there. And that's what's giving tension to that fast forward and rewind part. A couple of other little things here. This little guy sticking out right here is this thing. Has to do with the record activation, and record happens when it engages this switch right here. So it's possible you may need to put some contact cleaner. What I usually do is just spray it down through here, kind of push down on it, and then put your nozzle right in between that board there and that plastic piece, and clean that guy up. I did make some recording attempts on this thing, and it did not do very well. So recording is definitely something that it needs some extra love and repair regarding. So again, there's that board, and we'll go ahead and set it back down and put those two screws back in. All right, let's take a look at the cassette itself, talk a little bit about how it works, and talk about repairing it. Every single one of these cartridges, if you receive one, if you decide to collect one of these, is going to need to be repaired and inspected. Every one of them. And I'll show you in a little bit why that is the case. So the cassette itself has two stacked reels on the inside. The take up and the supply are both stacked on top of each other here. Above that is a plastic ring, or a plastic, I don't know, what do you call this thing? A plastic thing. We'll call it a thingy. So the thingy gets, this little part here gets released, and the thingy comes out. So once the thingy is unscrewed by the machine, then the tape is automatically wrapped around the video head at that moment. Isn't that groovy? On the side, you have a do not open thing going on right there. And notice there's some wrinkly tape in there. So we're going to need to edit that wrinkled tape off of the system. It could really cause problems. The machine is very intolerant of tape that is in bad shape. A whole lot more challenging than a Betamax or a VHS cassette. We have 5 screws. 2 here, 1 there, and 2 on the outside here. So let's remove those screws. No fancy screwdriver is needed. Just grab your Phillips screwdriver. Go ahead and unscrew all the screws. And here, right here, caution, cassette, do not touch tape. Do not disassemble. All right, notice there's a little cushy thing here that protects the playback heads. This is where your playback and your erase head show up. Again, your video head goes in this spot right here. All right, we've got our screws out. Let's flip it over. This little door on the side has a tendency to fly off because it's spring-loaded. So if you want to, you can put your thumb on it, hold it into place, and lift directly up. Set that off to the side. All right, there is another spring that's going to be right here. Set that off to the side. And then there's a little plastic thingy here that we saw the bottom of a minute ago. You can set that off to the side as well. Now you'll see here that there is a form to the way this is wound in here. It comes off the supply spindle here, goes around this guide, goes in kind of a loop up, kind of a twirl up around this plastic thing, goes around here, around this guide, and then onto the take-up spindle. So how do you repair one of these? How do you thread it, we'll say? Let's go over that. So you opened up your cartridge, you found bad tape, you spliced it out. Now you need to put this all back together. One of the obstacles that's going to be in your way are some foam pads. And if I remember correctly, there are 4 of them. There's going to be one here. I've already removed it. There's going to be one here. There's going to be one here. And then there's going to be one inside the lid, the top part as well. You're going to need to remove those completely, and you don't have to put anything back in their place. I'm not sure what they were there for. They are kind of cute, but other than their cuteness, I don't know what their functionality was for. So I removed them. There's going to be a powdery substance that comes from those sponges. You'll need to get that powdery substance removed and cleaned out as well. So we've done our repair to our tape. How do we get it back in here? Notice that the way this tape winds from the supply spindle on the left to the take-up spindle on the right is not quite like a VHS or a Betamax tape. Notice how it goes bottom left to top right, and the brown is your information side. This is just the backing, the black side. So the brown is going to be in the center of everything. It's going to be on the inside of the cartridge. All right. So if you end up with the black on the inside, you've done something wrong. Also, one other thing, there are these spokes on the outside, and there's a lock for them. There's these little guides right here. They are controlled by this bar, and by pushing in on the bar, you'll notice both of those guys move out of the way. So you'll need to move that manually if you need to move your cartridge around. So I'm going to drop that guy in there. I'm going to hit this so it'll fall in place. All right, brown side in. I'm going to go, turn it around this way. I'm going to go around this guide right here, and there is like a little spring action thing going on next to it, so it needs to go in between that little springy thing and the post. I'm doing this barehanded. You might want to do this with gloves. Unfortunately, I don't have the dexterity to do this with gloves on. I need that tactile feedback of what I'm doing. So there may be some dropouts on the tape where I've done this. If you're working on somebody else's tape, you might want to wear gloves just to preserve somebody else's memories. So we're going to go around there. There's a little guide right there and another guide there. So this is kind of like step 1. All right. Behind this guide, behind this plastic one, and behind this plastic one. Then we're going to kind of do a twirl of sorts. Give yourself a little slack to do so. What we want to do is kind of make an O right here with the tape. And drop that O inside that hole. Like that. Okay? Or you might call it a lasso. And then we've got these guides here in the front. We're going to go in between here, in between these two, and around this one. So let's go there, and then there, and then this sits right here, right on top. Okay, now the fun is going to be in getting this loop, this lasso here in the right spot. So do you see that there is a groove right here? Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see that. Okay, So we're going to get this tape to sit on this ledge right here. I'm going to do so like this. You might need to give yourself some more slack on the other side if you've already tightened it in. And we want that to just kind of sit on the wall right there. All right. I don't know if you guys ever remember, if you do remember, a ride called Tom's Twister at Six Flags. We had a Tom's Twister here in St. Louis at our Six Flags many years ago, and it was shaped just like this plastic piece we're going to put in. And when it would start turning, you would just get stuck to the outside wall because gravity would stick you there, and people would usually puke, which was always pleasant. All right, so we've got it into the spot there, so you need to go around and up, riding that groove up to the top, and then when you lift up the cassette, that tape should not fall off. See there? It's hanging on. But you can also see that there is a groove right there. And what we want to do is take the outer lip of our Tom's Twister thing here, and we want to loop it onto that groove. Okay, so kind of set it in there and get it started right on that groove. We're going to pretend that it's screwing in. It's not yet. We're going to pretend it is. You got to kind of wind your way along that groove. Eventually, it will kick in, and then you can just start screwing it in and not pretending at that point. You'll hear a click, and our Tom's Twisty thing is back in place as it should be. You'll want to pull the tape, the take-up spindle, just a little bit, take-up hub, and make sure that that is tight against the guides right above it there. And you've officially wound your tape back into the cartridge. Now with this spring that's on this door, you can see it right there. You can see it attaches to the end of the door right there, and then it attaches to that plastic piece, which right now is about center on that door. Okay? Hold this with your thumb until you get this lid put back on, okay? The top piece. Next thing, take this little gadget right here. We're going to drop it in right there. And then take our little spring. I dropped this spring earlier on a previous take, and it hit the floor, and I about never found it. It was just camouflaged on the floor, on the rug. All right, so again, hold that door with your thumb. If you need to switch thumbs, do so. But always hold it with a thumb. Then grab it like this, and then we're just going to lower it on to the bottom piece. That door is going to sit on the outside of the cartridge. And you heard it kind of click. It didn't really, it just kind of fell into where it was supposed to be. And you can see our tape is right there behind that door, and it is black. It should not be brown right there. All right, check your springy thing. Make sure it's still springy. If it is, then the spring fell into place where it was supposed to. Your next step is to go ahead and put your screws back in. Again, there's 2 here, 1 here, and 2 here.
Into your own pictures. And it can really be an awful lot of fun. This is sort of an offbeat way to do it. And you don't even need a self-timer on your camera. All you need is a camera which you can set for time exposures and a common household flashlight. I'll show you what to do. Let's see, I've got to reset this now. For time exposure, so put it on T. You can also use a locking shutter release cable if you want. And I'll turn it over here because I want a dark background. This technique really works best when you use a darkened room, very dark room. So turn out the lights to your room, get the flashlight ready, and then with the camera on T, set it off, open the shutter like this. Now, here's what I'm going to do. Well, let's see if I have a picture. As you can see, I just shine the light on myself and move myself around. With any kind of luck at all, I'll have a picture of myself. Absolutely insane.
The new Yamaha Virago has a V-twin engine, monoshock suspension, shaft drive. Not just to get you where you want to go, to get you where you want to be.
Yamaha, the way it should be.
And guys, that's going to do it for this video for today. Thank you for joining me on this journey back to 1976 and beyond. Thank you very much to my Patreon patrons who have been so loyal and faithful. I appreciate you guys supporting me. Please become a Patreon member today. If you have not joined the Patreon community, feel free to dive in. You can find me on social media within the links in my description. Also, click that like button, leave a comment. If there's anything else you'd like to see about this machine, maybe a deep dive into some other aspect of it, feel free to put a comment below and maybe we'll revisit the VR1000. There's also a gentleman on YouTube that has made like 1 million videos about this particular machine, and I've put a link to his channel in the description below as well. Again, thanks for watching. Have a great day and enjoy some time traveling.